Kevin from Utah says, how do you deal with the death of a family member when the rest of the family are believers? Hello, Kevin. How are you doing?
Hey, guys. Thanks very much for taking the call today. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you for joining.
So just a little bit of backstory to kind of give some context. I'm an atheist in Utah. Give you guys exactly one guess to figure out what my former beliefs were. But so no longer involved in any of that. And not very long ago, had a very sudden and unexpected death on my wife's side of the family. And they're all aware that I'm an atheist, and they are, for the most part, very respectful of that. There's sometimes a little bit of awkwardness when certain things like, oh, I'll pray for you comes up, or mostly on their end, because that kind of thing doesn't bother me. But when this came up and, father died unexpectedly, it's started to put me in a bit of an odd and unique situation in that, when they're, I guess, looking for that degree of comfort as any of us would, it almost instinctually goes to that, well, it's okay because, we'll be together again. Like we'll see him again in the afterlife. And I don't believe in that. And I think they know that about me. And it gets to this very strange point where I want to be comforting, and I don't want to, shoot that thought process down from the sky and just say, well, that's not true or anything like that, or we have no reason to believe that. But at the same time, I don't want to be dishonest, especially when they know my stances. And this hasn't really become a huge issue yet, but with it being Father's Day, it was just on my mind. And I just wanted to know if, as former believers, if you had any relative experience with that, if you could give me any sort of a footing to begin on, if that all makes sense.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, so I can say one instance that I've had, and there are some really good resources that are out there. For sure, there's a lot of different non-religious, secular-based therapy and things. The Secular Therapy Project, as well as Recovering from Religion. I'm a huge supporter of those organizations, and there's a bunch others too. But we do lack in the secular community more of this type of stuff, kind of how to deal with grief, and especially when there is that barrier of belief and non-belief between two people that are experiencing these terrible moments or just bad feelings, right? A year ago, a friend of mine that has been involved in Narcotics Anonymous for a very long time, he was successfully able to use the program and got help and is doing just a whole hell of a lot better. And that's true for a lot of people that have used those types of programs. There are still aspects, in my opinion, that I think are harmful for those. And one day he called me up and he told me that one of the people that he was sponsoring had relapsed, and they had died because of that. And, he already knew where I stood with AA and NA and those types of things. And I said, man, I think therapy's better. I really think you need to approach this in a more medical sense, go to the doctors, go to the experts. With all that being said, in that moment, that wasn't the time for me to really harp on anything. And honestly, that was what I told him. I just straight up said, Kevin, I said, hey man, you know that I'm not the biggest supporter of these programs, but right now isn't the time to check off all the bullet points as to why this is, something I disagree with, right? Right now is the time to just sit there with you and talk to you about, this person that you knew and that you were helping, to just sit there and share stories, or, just honestly sit there, right? Sometimes it's just really, really freaking nice to have another person just come over and not say anything and just sit there. And if you cry, you cry. And if you laugh, you laugh. And if you're just fucking quiet, staring off at the wall, you know, in those instances, that's one of the things that I really, really love about secular communities and secular therapy and stuff, is because we don't have to shoehorn it into a specific meaning. We don't have to try and backflip 40 times to try and figure out, you know, why it was that this 4-year-old was taken. We don't have to do that, because we know that there isn't some, you know, some magical wizard out there that's guiding us and he has some plan or something. It's not like that. Terrible things fucking happen. And sometimes the best that we can offer is just an ear, you know? I mean, AP.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Go ahead, Kevin. Go ahead.
No, and I agree with that wholeheartedly, and that makes a ton of sense. And I guess I get, because when this thing has come up, you know, in the past, I agree with you 100%, and I try to avoid that whole part of it, that whole aspect of like, okay, you know, an afterlife, and is there some greater purpose? Because I don't think there's any good. There's no point in a debate at that moment. Like you said, that it's not the time or the place. It's just the time to be there for each other. I guess what I'm more concerned about is when that topic comes up, and it's almost like one of those things where it's kind of like the glances come over to me, and it's almost like well, you don't think this is actually the case. And if it were to come to the point that someone were to ask me if I think we're going to see him again, I don't want to lie, but at the same time, I don't necessarily think that there's any good in me saying, no, I don't believe that. And I think the only thing that I've even said regarding it up to this point is, well, you know, just because it's something that I don't believe doesn't necessarily mean that I'm right. And I think that's true, but I don't know. I kind of feel like that was me maybe skirting around the topic in a way. And I just don't, but that's the best thing I've come up with thus far. And I don't know, maybe that's just the answer I need to stick with, but.
You have the right, Kevin. You have the right, because you're a person and because all the other people around you have this right too, which is, if somebody wants your thoughts on something and you're actually not interested in giving them your thoughts, you just don't have to. And you can just say, and it's tough sometimes, don't get me wrong, when somebody keeps pestering you and they're like, no, come on, tell me, come on. But sometimes, you know, the right thing is just to say, hey, this isn't a topic I personally want to talk about. You know, if you're comfortable and you say, hey, y'all keep chatting away, you know, hash it out, whatever. But me personally, this just isn't something that I want to discuss right now. Sometimes that means that you know, you have to leave a situation, and that's kind of a bummer. But you know, it's better than that outcome is going to be better than you saying, you know, let's just say you go, well, I don't really think heaven and hell is real. And the next thing you know, it's a shouting match and everybody's mad at each other. And in a time when right. You know, we should be focusing on the grief and trying to actually work through that trauma. It's not easy for sure, especially when somebody is kind of hammering it at you like they're the one that's grieving, and then they're just, you know, shouting at you repeatedly about God and God and God and God. And it's like, okay, well, if that's comforting, That's okay. I can, in that instance, I can let that slide. I'm not gonna start bringing out all the ontological and axiomatics, and I'm not gonna do any of that shit.
Yeah,
You know?
if I may just add my thoughts to that, I think everything that has been said, I very much agree with it. It's kind of a similar situation when a religious person says, I will pray for you or God bless you. I could turn around and say, shut up, you know, or I could say, hey, that doesn't make sense. I don't believe in it. Or I could just say, oh, thank you. I appreciate that. It doesn't matter if I believe in that or not. What matters is that the person says something that is supposed to be kind or nice or comforting, and I just appreciate it and go on with it. I don't have to believe in it. And in terms, when it comes to the death of somebody, which is of course not comparable, it's a much harder thing to deal with. I also lost a very loved person in the past, and I mean, you don't have to be. I don't have to be an asshole to people just because I don't believe in whatever makes them feel comfortable. If they feel comfortable believing that they will see this person again in some other life or in the afterlife, that's okay. Like you do whatever you feel comfortable with. Don't impose it on me. Don't expect it of me. If you so badly want my opinion, if you want to push me to give my opinion on that, I guess I could say, hey, you should do whatever you think is right. You should do whatever makes you feel comfortable. I have different thoughts, and those are not relevant right now. We can talk about that some other time. I guess it might be smart to be just socially aware and to act according to the room and the situation.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And I think.
Well, yeah, hey guys.
Oh, go ahead, please.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, please. I was just kind of wrapping up. Yeah.
That, as was I. I was just going to say that I really appreciate the words and the advice. It means a lot, and I know you have other callers to get to, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. But I do appreciate what you guys do, and I think you have a crazy amount of patience with some of the calls that you take. I don't know where that comes from, but good on you. And just to everybody listening, I really would love it if more believing Mormons would call into the show, because just from my own personal experience, those are always the most entertaining calls to me. So that's all I was going to say. And thank you guys very much for the time.
Thank you, Kevin.
I appreciate it very much. Thank you, Kevin.